daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Southampton, part of the Global Sports Podcast Network. My name is Greg Elliott, and as always today joined by my good friend and wonderful co-host, Zach Finch. How you doing, mate? You alright?
Hello. Yeah, not too bad at all.
And look, we're in international break. It's not news to anyone. We're all thrilled by it, as we frequently display. But one thing that is good about these international breaks, Zach, is that it gives us the opportunity to have a pause and have a little, moment of reflection upon ourselves and look back at our predictions and how we're doing and just think about it and talk about it, because it's been an interesting start, right? So I don't know. I've got some maybe some contrary opinions on this, but how are you feeling at the moment about how we're getting on?
I don't know why, and I don't think it's really related, but it's just very funny to me that Nathan Jones and James Bree are both up for Manager of the Month and Player of the Month. And I don't know why that's related, but I think that I think it's more of the vibes that are off than the actual reality of the situation. That's what I'm feeling at the moment. Like, I think we're doing all right. We're not doing the worst. We're not doing great. I think that we ourselves and the club themselves set kind of unrealistic expectations that we were going to come down off of a 12-point season and somehow just make it back up straight away like we did the time before, especially considering that, we didn't manage to really ship all of the players we wanted. I think there are high expectations that we should have brought in players of significantly better caliber than we have access to. And I can't stress this enough. Why would they want to? like you are coming into a team that has had problems, has had trouble. You are only really going to get people who want to help grow from that, and also players that, probably want to step up into the club rather than step down or sideways, right? There's just a lot of things that I think we could do better, but I don't think it's as in dire straits as everyone seems to kind of be acting like it is. And I can't help but feel that, some of the people are reacting to like the fact that we've drawn a few. We've only lost two, but we've drawn a few games and barely won anything at the moment, as like this sort of. I know I'm rambling a bit, but like, do you see where I'm getting at? Like, it feels like the vibe doesn't match the reality of the situation, and like people are freaking out and being like, "We should hire Russell Martin. We should get another manager." And I'm like, how are we ever expected to do well? Like, do you want to just be Watford? Is that what you want?
No, look,
hire a manager every time that someone gets slightly annoyed. Like,
I fully agree with you. I actually think we're doing all right. And look, I know that it's easy to look at the table and go, "Oh, well, we're 17th," but also, look, it's just too early in the league to actively look at the table.
There's 9 points between top and 17th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we are. We're not. We're 8 points off the top of the league. Literally, that is a 1 game week. That is a 3-game week turnaround of games, right?
Are people thinking
we could come back from the international break, and it is not outside of the realms of possibility that Coventry lose those 3 games on the bounce in that 3-game week. Something happens to them. They hit a bump or something, and we hit the ground running and have all of our stuff lined up and it all starts piecing together and we win those 3 games, and then in literally 7 days we could be at the top of the table. And now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that's what I think is going to happen, but that is not outside the realms of possibility. It is just not bad. I think we're doing fine. We're up and amongst it. Look, yes, it's taken longer for the players to gel than we would have liked. Yes, there's still this scar tissue. There's still this reluctance to take risks, I think, is more than scar tissue in a lot of areas. There's still this cautiousness, and some of that comes from last season, and some of that probably comes from just this insane pressure that's coming. But it's still looking promising, and there are still questions to be answered for sure, because Ross Stewart seemed to be one of these key puzzle pieces for how we've sort of come together and done these things, and probably going to get goal of the month for that goal, right? That's one of the options you can vote for on the app, and now it looks like he's out for months and not weeks, which if
we should chat about that. But the only thing I wanted to bring up before we get onto that was that the other argument I keep seeing is that Will Stills had a full preseason. Not really. so many of those players that were preseason have now gone.
Yeah.
So we've got loads of new players, and this is where there's a lot of blame on Sports Republic, where it's like, oh, they should have got the transfers sorted earlier. We discussed this throughout all of our transfer episodes. Like, the moving puzzle pieces is like a house chain, right? Like, this player needs to leave at this club to be able to sanction this transfer. This team is refusing to budge on their valuation, but we shouldn't just pay whatever any team wants for their player whenever. So then the problem is, if you believe that we shouldn't pay whatever any other team wants us to pay, then you have to accept that there's a negotiation period, which means that it'll extend the amount of time before somebody can be brought in, combined with the other factors, right? Like, there have been players we've targeted that people will lament us not getting, like Spurzian's an example, right? How much time was wasted on that transfer? Of course, they then fell back on their backup plans. I don't know whether Finn Azaz was the backup plan for that. Not really quite too sure. But that took time, which means that all of these players came in significantly later than we wanted to. None of us wanted to be in a position where we had debuts happening at the Pompey game, right?
No.
But it's unfortunately part and parcel of the game. So he didn't get a full preseason, right? And Russell Martin was the same, don't get me wrong. There was less turnaround, in my opinion, at that point. There were players that were brought in. And obviously, to be honest with that, it was more transforming the entirety of the way that most of those players played anyway. And all the ones that didn't want to got hooked off after that Gillingham game, right?
Yeah.
So the real crux of where I'm at is that people are thinking we should be like, I can't use a visual aid on this podcast if you're listening to it, but people think we should be significantly far down the sort of the path towards top of the table than we are in reality, because there's just almost an assumption that, well, we've come down, we've got this money, we're an ex-Prem team, we should just immediately bounce back up. And I get it, but we came off the back of a 12-point season. We have had to rebuild, replace the manager, change everything else. Some of the players haven't hit the ground running, some have. It's frustrating. We're all frustrated, but the problem is the snap. I just don't see anything from him that's positive or good. Okay, well then, that's not going to change anything. We all need to protest and get him fired again.
And I disagree with that inherently, because we've had shots on target every game this season, so that's already better, right?
Well,
we need to remember how bad last season was.
That's right? The other problem is it's not quite realizing that, okay, we had a full preseason with a bunch of players, some of which have gone, but then we had our issues with Taylor Harbour-Bellis and Jack Stevens being in defence. Jack Stevens was the hero of the Wrexham game. Can't pull that away from him. But also, that was a problem. It's the first manager in a long time has been willing to take that risk and then just go, wow, okay, let's completely revamp your defence. I'm going to move into this formation. This formation isn't working. Let's move back. You've got people like Amarin that are refusing to do that. Russell Martin's just been fired off the back of refusing sort of realistically to change his tactics. We've got a manager that's doing that, and people are like, nah, everything he does bad. I think we should give somebody else a shot. Bring Danny Rowland. It's there needs to come a time that we just kind of, it's like, guys, just go with the flow for a little bit. I admit, if we lose 10 games in a row at 5-0, 3-1, 4-1, probably start to change my tune a little bit. But I do think there's just a very, very big sort of vibe that is just very, very off. And I can understand all of the reasons to why, but I just think that pointing directly at the manager and screaming, "Will Still, you're rubbish," and all the players you brought in are rubbish, and then moaning about it constantly isn't helping the situation and won't improve that either, right? Not that
Indeed.
anyone's not entitled to do that, don't get me wrong. But also, I'm entitled to completely ignore your opinion. Likewise, you're entitled to ignore mine. But when we come back from this break, Greg, I guess we'll talk about the impact of Ross Stewart's injury, because some of the responses and what we should do about that have been funny.
Funny, insane, all of these things. Yes, mate, let's have a break and talk about it.
Your body is unique. And Global Sports Podcast Network has partnered with Bioniq, the world's most personalised supplements. Bioniq provide 100% tailor-made supplements designed to deliver precisely what your body needs at exactly the right levels to optimise your health. No guessing. So click the link in the show notes. Use the code GSPN2025 for 40% off your first month's subscription. Bioniq. Don't settle for off-the-shelf solutions made for just anybody. Get what's right for you right now. Your body is unique.
Okay, mate, and we are back. Ross Stewart, man, right? Look, it's been reported he's going to be out for months, not weeks. Just as he was starting to, look like the player that we'd expected when, or at least the club expected when they signed him, right? And there's been lots of murmurs and panic about that. But I've got two points to make about that. And the first is, if we didn't come into this season expecting him to be out for some of the season, what are we doing here? And secondly, like, we've got strikers who can score goals. We just need to play the appropriate type of ball to them. So let's just work on that, right? Like,
Yeah.
right, oh, we got no one that we can lump the ball up to. Well, maybe let's just not do that for a bit. Like, let's focus on playing to their strengths and like playing to their feet, right? It's just
And again, like we've had games like that, and that's been Will Still's sort of criticism. He's like, I don't understand why the players are lumping the ball up to Archer. That isn't something we taught them to do or have told them to do. Again, maybe it's fallen back into a panic or this and the other. Yeah, like Adam Armstrong finding a slight bit of form. Like we'll ignore the penalty the other day, but besides the point, Archer's scored some goals, right?
yeah,
Maybe Downs we've already discussed in length. I'm not going to go into it again. I don't think that lad needs any more criticism than he's already getting elsewhere. And if anything, I just hope he comes good.
yeah.
We've also got
He needs time, patience, and throwing him straight into the team with the expectation that he's going to be this magic fix-all for the gap that is Ross Stewart isn't going to help that.
no,
Like,
not in the slightest.
It's not going to help him. It's not going to help anyone. So let's not put him in that position.
You've got a lad in the under 21s that's 6-5 and was like 27-25 last season that potentially they could always bring in if they really want to, if they ever want to, experiment a little bit more around. I don't think the answer is bringing in a bunch of free agent strikers that are as injury prone, if not more, than Ross Stewart. Like I don't know if Antonio's ever going to be back to a state where I don't know if he's counting himself as a free agent or is kind of just accepted he might be retiring. I'm not entirely sure about that situation. I won't lie, but surely like a leg break is going to be probably mean that he's going to be an abundance of caution around him. Bamford has spent a lot of his time out because of the fact he was very injury prone. The Ross Stewart thing is heartbreaking. It was a risk the club took when they signed him. They probably never thought it was going to be this much of a problem. I said 3 games in 1 week for him was a bit too much, but as you pointed out, if he says he's ready, what else can you really do? Like, unless you're giving him a scan every single day and doing tests every single day, you kind of have to trust what's being said. Maybe he thought he was okay. Yeah, okay, he stretched too long, and bang, that's hit his hamstring again. He knew straight away. They subbed him off immediately. It really, really sucks. We've played this experiment of hiring injury prone players before. It's not really paid out too well. I just feel for the guy more than anything else. Like, seem to finally be back, wanting to be back into football. And, I very much doubt he'll get a renewal on his contract just because of these issues, which means that, depending on whether he manages to come back this season and play really well, which obviously we're all hoping for, it might be that when his contract comes to an end, he's played, under 30 odd appearances and not managed to score the goals that he wants. And it's just really sad. But I don't think that it's probably one of the few things I've ever really disagreed with, like Alfie House and stuff about is, putting out an article and talking about, oh, well, who can we get to replace him? I kind of agree with you, Greg. Like, we've got strikers. It feels like the idea of us like panic buying and a striker that's a free agent is even more absurd than the fact that we hunted out a specific type of player that we decided to buy in, for example, Damien Downs, and then it's not working out and everyone's mad, and everyone seems to think that getting a free agent would work out. Like, I don't understand, why people think that. Like, it's like, oh, but they've got a proven track record of scoring goals at this level, and I'm like,
so do our strikers. Cameron Archer has that track record.
Yeah,
Adam Armstrong has that track record.
Top scorer for so yeah. There's a lot of.
We're supposed to have the whole, not the whole point. The biggest benefit and selling point of Will Steele is that he's a pragmatic manager who will play the system that suits what we've got and be dynamic and evolved, and we have strikers that can score goals, and now we have to put behind them the ability to get them the ball in the way they need to score the goals. I don't think at any point the strikers have really been the problem. Sure, they are not the most clinical finishers, and they never have been, but that doesn't mean that we don't need to keep putting them in those positions, right? They still score goals. They score good goals. That's the answer we've got to find. Just make the change and like you say, stop trying to lump it up to Cameron Archer when that's clearly not what he's going to do. Damien Downs, when you watch him play, his movement suggests that he is also not a player that you're going to lump it up to, despite him being slightly taller. Like, if you can play that way and play them in, there's attacking force there. We just need to get it to work.
I'm only laughing and smiling, mate, because I'm just thinking about Paul Onuachu and everyone being like, well, he's a really tall guy. Let's throw it to his head, and then it just never ever playing off with him, right? That's another perfect example.
Yeah,
I got an out there take. I'd say out there take. It's a take I've seen a few times, and I think that it's something I've brought up the last couple of podcasts that we've done. So yeah, maybe we can talk about it, Greg, after a word from our partners at Zencastr.
Here at the Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform, and Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr.
Right, mate. My out there take, and I say it's my out there take. It's not. It's several people's out there take, and I've seen it discussed a few times. But I've spoken about it early on. When do we start reintegrating Joe Eribo and potentially Adozi? Because you want a big, tall guy to lump the ball up to. I mean, he was our top goal scorer last season, like, for a while. Why don't we just make Joe Eribo our new striker? Like,
look, I don't hate that idea. I'm surprised that they have not been integrated already at this point in some way. And I mean, I guess the main problem is that we've got quite a big squad, so who drops out for them to drop in is the like outside looking in answer. But it still surprises me because they are quality players, and Will still talked about wanting that quality on the wing, and that's what Adozi brings. And last time we saw him, he was pacey and willing to take a player on and lacked an end product, and then he went away and had a good loan spell. And I don't know if that's going to have changed, if that's still his outcome, but we don't know because we've not seen him. And yeah, Eribo has time and time again in a Saints shirt shown that he, he is not like the best player in the world, but he is a player who, when on form, can give you a solid 8 out of 10 performance in a number of different roles. Very versatile player through the team. So I'm really surprised we've not seen them already, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them in some capacity after the international break.
Especially where he sort of reportedly a top paid player, right? Which makes sense.
Yeah,
he's brought in during a Premier League campaign that we were trying to desperately save. It is odd. And that's one of the reasons that I think there must be something going on behind the scenes. But also, you raise a valid point of who do you drop? Do you drop all of the players that have been bought in from day one that are going to training, working really, really hard, have been willing to do anything? Example, like Ryan Fraser, right? For two players that were basically had their heads out of the door, were just waiting, and then it didn't pay out for them, right? With Eribo, I don't even think he was actually properly linked to anyone in the end.
yeah,
It was a Turkish team that he wasn't interested in going to, and at one point, a loose rumor of Russell Martin bringing him to Rangers, right? And because obviously going back to Rangers as well.
yeah.
Other than that, it wasn't anything solid. So I don't really know. Is it that he's being adamant that he's fallen behind the scenes? But the things that I find bizarre about that are the club put out promo of them returning to training after the closing of the transfer window. But then it's pretty much radioed silence since then. And we've not really seen them in the matchday squad. So I've, not seen them on the bench, not really seen much else of them. And is it because of their if they're basically now just waiting for a January move? Is that why they don't want to bother wasting reintegrating them into the squad, building a good run of form going, and then having to deal with them leaving in January? But then it says to me why we wouldn't have just accepted whatever was thrown their way in August if we're just not going to play them for 6 months and then let them leave 6 months later. It's a very,
Yeah.
very strange situation either way.
But yeah, it's truly bizarre, and look, we don't know. Maybe something else is happening in the background with them, and you don't know. You don't know what happens. Maybe they've had conversations
well,
with
right?
still. Yeah,
100%. We don't argue. The point is we don't really know, and I think that's what's more frustrating. It's understanding that this was we had Grom back, right, and we for a long time tried to figure out what's going on, and then I literally think we had to get it confirmed with George from the Echo that. It was oh yeah, he's out injured. I'm oh right, good. I'm glad somebody asked that question finally, and then obviously never played for us again after that point. But it feels very much like that situation. But judging from the fact that both Reece Julian and Alfie House are talking about Eribo and Adozi in a similar way to that we are, there is a lot of just not knowing around it, and it just feels a bit weird. But it is something that's there. It's like looking at a tool in your toolbox and being oh, we could use this tool. Be oh no, can't touch that one. We don't know why. I think that's probably why it feels a bit bizarre. But clearly, maybe that will change after the international break. Maybe it was getting them up to speed. But I also think it could simply be that the other players are the ones that are showing the willingness to show are up to speed, do want to play, and that's why they're getting picked. But then also that kind of defeats the object of what we've talked about with Will still being really pragmatic, because he's chosen players and dropped players that you'd expect him to have loyalty to. Very Russell Martin-esque, right? Is what you'd expect, but he's proven immediately no, I'll drop Stevens. Stevens is playing not great.
yeah.
So
You see it as well, subbing off Tom Fellows, who to the eye of all of us have been one of the better players on the pitch, and bringing on Fraser. But it's it is a very strange one. I don't have the answer. I wish we did.
I don't think any of us. I don't think any of us do, and I think that for me, one of the big important parts of it is going to be increasing as the players gel more. increasing that like level of pass accuracy, making sure that people are in the right positions, because that's been like a lot of our problems. It hasn't really even been, finishing's always been a problem. That's just being a Saints fan, right? Like, however, like losing sort of the second balls or not passing properly seems to be one of the big issues, and maybe that's why they've been like so reliant on this lumping up the ball system until that bit clicks into place, until we're able to like pass properly. Because that's the other issue. If we can't have those like through balls to Cameron Archer, they're going to constantly like just end up passing to the opposition, right? So I just hope that the break does all of them good. They're able to gel a bit more, and I just think as a fan base, maybe we should just like take it as it comes a bit more, rather than thinking that every game that we don't win is a loss, and every game that we don't win by every game that the 2 games that we have lost are like the worst things in the world, and that we need to fire the manager immediately. That is, it's not the reality of how anything should work. But again, just my opinion. You're all entitled to your own.
But look, I mean, when we get back, we got another 3-game week. They come thick and fast. You get this like odd international break, and then it's Swansea, Bristol away, Blackburn away, all in a 7-day period. And I mean, that in itself is the challenge of the league, right? Like being physically ready to play that much football in 3 days. Like, it's just, you go back to the human element. That's hard physically and mentally.
Yeah, for sure.
But look, we'll talk more about that and more about the upcoming games, I'm sure, as the break continues. But that's a wrap for us this week. Zach, as always, thank you so much for joining me and waffling nonsense about football. My favourite part of our day.
Thank you for listening to me go on more than a few rants and
it's what we love
about probably nonsense, and most of it doesn't matter, but I enjoy it nonetheless.
It all matters because we care very much about our football club, and that's why we do this. Thank you, everyone, for listening. Let us know in the comments, what do you think? Steps in the right direction, good enough so far, or we just had enough and want rid? What if that is your opinion? What's the alternative? Love to hear it. We take all of the opinions and would love to hear them. Anyway, we're on all the socials. Let us know there. We're on X, Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, Blue Sky, every single one of them. Hit us up. We'd love to hear from you. Like I say, we'll be back Monday, but until then, with no Saints to Rooney weekend, it's undeniable everybody has to have a fantastic weekend. So we'll see you Monday.
Your daily soccer podcast with the Global Sports Podcast Network.